Vaughn, welcome to the show, brother.
It's great to be here, Mark. Thank you for having me. I'm excited about our
Absolutely.
conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive in. But before we do that, for those who are not familiar with who you are, give us a little bit of your dad bio. What have you got going on at home?
I have four little girls, all under the age of 8. The oldest is Lila. She's going to be 8 in October. And then I have a 5-year-old named Veronica, a 3-year-old named Mariah, and a little one who's just a little bit over 1, Emma Jane. So my life is filled with women. And my
What a
wife would like to
bastard.
have another one. We're kind of navigating and negotiating that right now because I got married when I was a little bit later in life. So I
Yeah.
got married when I was 38. So I already feel, age is just a number, and I feel good about my life and my age. But oh my gosh, I'm 47 and I have little girls, so it's like I don't know. They're going to be live streaming the high school graduation to the retirement home. you know, but no, I'm very blessed. I just have great kids. I mean, everybody says that about their kids, but
Yeah.
all four of our daughters are very, very strong-willed, but they're not strong-willed in a mean-spirited way. They're pretty sweet girls. So
Oh, that's
it's
awesome.
it's
Well,
it's been
you
really
definitely
great.
have your hands full then.
Yeah, I do. I do. But they're at the age right now where I don't know if I don't know yet to know when they're teenagers if they'll be this receptive, but they're at the age right now where if daddy wants to teach them something, like we have some Bible time every morning, where I have a little lesson, they eat it up. I doubt that they'll be like that their whole life, but right now, if I have a little lesson I want to impart, if there was some, I want to take them a little field trip, teach them something, they eat it up. They love it. So it's a good age.
That is so awesome, man. Lean into that now while you can, because trust me,
Hmm.
it does not last. And it changes like
Yeah.
over a summer.
Yeah.
That's what really caught me off guard, kind of knocked me back on my heels a little bit. It's like my girls went from being my little girls, dad was their hero. And I shouldn't say that I stopped being their hero, but
Yeah.
they over a summer, they
Right.
blossom into these teenagers, and all of a sudden mom and dad are dumb and
Yeah.
you can't tell them.
Yeah. And it's funny. I had a couple of guys tell me, don't take that too personally because they're going through such hormonal changes. They're probably not even in control of their reason.
Right.
So so I wouldn't take it too personally. But no, for what it's worth, I've had a number of guys say that all of the really important lessons or all the important talks that you think you need to have with your kids when they're in high school, they say have it way earlier.
Oh
Have it
yeah.
when they're like 10 or 11, you know, and that way they'll listen to you more closely.
Well, not only that, they're more receptive to it, like you said, but they're getting exposed to that stuff much
Right.
sooner in life as well.
Right.
And so, yeah, you definitely want to be ahead of the curve when it comes to that.
Absolutely. For
Yeah,
sure. Yeah. But no, I'm blessed. I've got a good crew.
that's awesome, man. Well, let's dive in. And I apologize for those listening. I don't know if you can hear my dog barking in the other room.
No, but I
I don't
love
I don't
dogs,
hear it
so I
right
wouldn't
now, but
mind.
I heard him go off. I heard him go off a second ago. Oh, what do you do? Well, let's dive in. You've got a new book titled Sacred Drive: Biblical Principles for Pursuing Your God-Given Potential. Now, in the book's description, you define sacred drive as a righteous motivation to pursue our God-given potential. My first question, I guess, probably sounds a little elementary, but I don't want to alienate anybody who might be new to Christianity or the concept that God created all of us for a purpose. So how would you define God-given potential?
Oh, I think that, all of us talk about having talents. We have a certain level of intelligence or a certain kind of intelligence. We're good at art or we're good at science or, some of us are good at multiple things. We have bodies that we can do things with. We have a will that can make choices. And so nobody would argue that all of us possess um, certain assets. And it's our job, it's our responsibility to cultivate those assets in our life, to take whatever resources that we have in our life and make the most of those things. And when I say God given, it's simply the recognition that um, everything you have in your life is a gift. everything you're good at, everything that you're capable of doing is a gift. It's a gift from God. So that's kind of, I think most people, regardless of whether they're spiritual or not, or they have a faith or not, they would recognize that every human being has certain abilities or certain opportunities. I'm just saying those abilities and those opportunities don't ultimately come from you. They come from God. They're gifts,
Mm,
and as such, they're meant to be valued, and they're meant to be cultivated, and they're meant to be used in a way that honors the gift giver.
right on. So would your answer change at all if we were talking about the word success? If you were to define the word success, which I think the world uses more than, God-given potential.
Yeah, I think success is really, you have all those standard answers, right? When you talk about, to most people, about what defines success, and a lot of people will say, well, I'd like to make a lot of money, or I'd like to get six-pack abs, or I'd like to um, be famous, maybe star in a Hollywood movie. None of those things in and of themselves are bad, but I think that those who have a true faith in Christ, those who have a connection with God, understand that ultimately you have to let God define that success. And the way that I think God defines success, first and foremost, is, um, are we daily conforming to the character of Christ? Are we daily becoming more like the person God meant us to be? Um, do we have the virtues of love, joy, peace, kindness, faithfulness, goodness in our lives? And are those growing in abundance every day? That's character is the number one definition of success from God's perspective. Beyond that, I think all of us have a calling. We have what I would call our big C calling and our small C calling. Our big C calling is to love God and to love other people. Everybody has the same calling. It's the love of God and to love other people. And to the extent that you effectively pursue that calling, you're successful. Our small C calling is that mission or that project to which we are specifically called, that unique responsibility that God gives to us and to us alone. And so, to the extent that you faithfully pursue that calling, you're successful. Whether you make a lot of money, whether your name is known, whether you're famous or you're not famous, or you have six-pack abs or you don't. Those are the ways that God defines success. But once you recognize that, I think that we are given, and I mean, if I understand the scriptures and church teaching throughout the history, if I understand it correctly, we are given a lot of freedom. um, there's a famous quote. It's by St. Augustine. It's love God and do as you please. And basically what he means by that is what I said earlier, is that your number one calling in life is to worship God and to serve him in everything you do. But if you are set on that, he gives us an infinite number of choices and a really delightful freedom to just pursue what interests us in life. So if you want to be a painter, if you want to be a car salesman, if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to be an actor, go for it. God says go
Mhm.
for it. Put your heart and soul into it, invest in it totally, and be the best you can possibly be in that area of your life, if that's what you feel called to. So yeah, success is, first and foremost, loving God and loving others, and then it's loving your life and enjoying the good things that God has put in your life. um, and I think the last thing I would say with regard to that is a key difference between, I think, sort of a worldly pursuit of material things or earthly blessings is that it's fine to enjoy those things, but they can never be, for a Christian or for someone who really has a relationship with God, they can never be the center of your life. So there
Mm,
always has to be sort of a holy detachment to these things. Like, yeah, I want those things. It's nice to enjoy them, but I don't need them. I don't need them to
mhm.
be happy. Above all else, I just need God. I want God and I want the people that I love, my family, my friends. Um, and ultimately, other than that, I'm just detached. It's great if I have those things, but if I don't, that's cool. It's fine.
Yeah. It's so hard to detach though in
Yeah.
this day and age. We're supposed to drive the fancy car. We're supposed to
Yeah.
have the biggest house, and that's all you see everywhere. And it's so easy to detach and to not let those things become your focus. But when we do, I mean those things then become our God.
Right.
We can only have one God.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's an important point that I think it's easy to lose sight of in this day and age.
One of the questions that I've gotten a lot is whether a Christian should pursue success, like actually pursue financial success or athletic success or something like that. And I always say, I think the way to look at it is my friend Ben Newman, who he's a mental toughness coach, a performance coach with a lot of the really major programs, Division I programs. Like he's a mental toughness coach for Alabama football. He works with all these really impressive executives and CEOs and athletes. And the phrase that he always uses is attack the process. In other words, don't be so focused on the results. Just do what you
Mm,
know you're supposed to do and let the results take care of themselves. And I talk about that in the book. And I think in answer to the question, should a Christian pursue success? Should someone who's God driven pursue success? To me, the answer is attack the process. In other words, whatever you're doing in life, commit to doing the best possible level that you can do. Commit to
mm.
excellence, attack the process, and then let God take care of the results. My genuine thought on this is that if you really truly are maximizing all the gifts that God gives you, will that have financial benefits? Most likely. Will that have physical benefits? Almost certainly. I mean, you put in the work, you're going to get the results in the gym. Will that have
Yeah.
relational benefits? Of course. But at the end of the day, it's God. It's up to God to determine whether you end up becoming a multimillionaire or whether He allows certain challenges in your life that drain you of cash. I mean, I've known a lot of people who are very, very faithful in everything they do and had lots of money stored up, and but there were tragedies that happened in their life. Their, their daughter got very sick, and I know this couple very well, and it wasn't covered by insurance, and it drained their life savings. And
Wow.
and so what I want to say to people is that you have to give God the right to make those decisions. God allows those things to happen for a reason. And so generally speaking, if we do maximize our talents and our gifts, yes, there are, like I said, economic benefits. But there are sometimes where God allows us to go through trials that cost us money and cost us our health and cost
Yeah.
us our friends and family and our loved ones. And ultimately, you have to say, there is a God and I'm not him. My job is to
Yeah.
attack the process. My job is to be faithful. I'm going to let God take care of the results.
Yeah. 100%. I think that is such a key life lesson. And so many of these topics that I touch on week to week, I think of my role as a parent, and the only child I have left in the house is my youngest son. And that point of attacking the process, learning to love the process that will get to, whatever result that you want, is so key. And I think it's getting lost in these young people today because we live in this microwave society. We expect instant results, and Instagram and Facebook and all these other things makes it look like everybody else is successful and you're the only one that's not.
Yeah.
And we're losing sight of the fact that there's enjoyment in the process. You need to fall in love with the process. And I need to remind myself of that as a business owner too. Yes, I'm in business to make money, but I need to enjoy the day-to-day grind or I'm never going to last.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
For
that's
sure.
such a key point.
As you're talking, I'm thinking about, years ago there was a episode, for those who may not know, I was a co-host on a show called the MFCO Project with Andy Frisella. Andy's a very, very genius level multimillionaire entrepreneur and motivator. And he delivered an episode a couple years ago called "The Magic Number That Guarantees Success." And it was supposed to be tongue in cheek, right? Because people hop on there, oh, what's this magic number, right? Well, his answer was the magic number is 1,000,000, meaning do something 1,000,000 times and you'll be successful. This idea that attacking the process, well, it doesn't mean just attack the process once or twice or 3 times or 100 times. It means attack the process over and over and over again. Become a master at monotonously executing what you're supposed to do every day. and you will see results. And so that's, I think, what you're talking about is that, not everybody, especially younger people, although there's certainly a lot of older people who have to learn this lesson, that you have to execute again and again and again in any area of
Yeah.
life. That's
Yeah.
true financially, and that's true spiritually.
Yeah. But it takes time and it takes
Right.
effort, which
Right.
so many people are they steer clear of it when they
Right.
can.
Right. But it is one of those things that the more you do it, you start building momentum, and you start seeing the fruit of your actions, and it's a very exciting thing. And so if you can just hang in there and build, get on a winning streak, good things happen and good feelings happen.
Yeah. So why this book? I know you've written other books. What led you to write this book in particular?
Yeah. So I mentioned that I spent time as a co-host of a podcast. The focus on the podcast wasn't just motivation; it was building businesses, scaling businesses to 9 figures. That's the whole idea. And so we got a really, really sizable audience over the last 5 or 6 years. And a lot of people who listened were Christians, or they were people who were interested in the spiritual aspect of life and in a relationship with God. And 2 questions that I got very, very consistently was, one, hey, I'm very, very ambitious and driven, and I feel guilty about that. And is it okay for a Christian to be ambitious and driven? And then the second question I got, which was, um, you know, there's a lot in the personal development and self-help space that's sort of, it's good stuff, but it's very often associated with some goofy pop psychology and some new age thinking. And so they said, is there any way to approach these things from a biblical standpoint, from a standpoint that's more consistent with God's word? And so I started thinking about both of those questions, and I thought, well, I'm going to write a book that answers these questions. And so the idea was to show people that yes, you can be a driven, ambitious person. You can want to crush your goals and achieve your dreams, but there's a way to do that is consistent with God's will and ultimately motivated by the glory of God and the good of the world. And that's what the book talks about. And then it also addresses very common themes of personal development, um, like organizing your day, like physical fitness, like even focusing on a single day, winning the day, as Andy and a lot of people say. And it addresses those categories of personal development from a biblical standpoint. So I try to unpack each principle from the perspective of, what does God's word say? What have great Christians throughout the history of the church, what have they said about motivation and physical fitness and um, you know discipline and mental toughness and all those things? So I address those things from a Christian standpoint.
Love it. So needed today. I'm curious, through the process, going back to talking about process, in hindsight, looking back, did you learn any lessons that maybe you didn't realize before?
Well, you mentioned process, so we're kind of on this process theme. I'm not sure this is the answer you're looking for, but the actual writing of the book and the process that it took to actually complete that book was such a life lesson to me in reinforcing certain basic principles of being successful, really, in anything you do. Um, I've been a pretty good writer for most of my life, and I have started a number of books over the course of my life that I, really wanted to write, and I never finished because
Oh, wow.
I'd get overwhelmed, or I'd start overthinking things, and I'd be critical, and I'd say, "Oh, this is no good," and I'd be 3/4 of the way into the book and just trash it, and just, I mean, my inner editor and my inner critic just had its way with me. And
Yeah.
so I realized, like, I really want to finish this book. I want to get it done because I believe that it has a really great message to offer. So I learned a couple lessons, and I implemented a couple of different strategies, and they really worked. And one strategy was, I just decided, you know what? These are going to be short chapters, because if I get into long involved chapters, I'm going to get overwhelmed. My readers are going to get overwhelmed. And so I'm going to feel as if I'm accomplishing more if I just make them short, pithy chapters, get in, explain, get right to the point, and move on. And so I did that. And I was able to manage the writing of the book so much better because of, instead of 10 really, deep, elaborated chapters, I just hit, I wrote 17 short, like I said, to the point chapters. And so I was able, every time I finished one of those, I was able to have a feeling of accomplishment, and it motivated me to move on. And that's just something that I just think in general, all of us need to, set big dreams, have grand things that you want to accomplish, but break it up into small, manageable,
Yes.
projects, and so that you can tell that you're progressing. You can get a sense of motivation, of a feeling of accomplishment. So that's the first thing. The other thing I would say is it really takes a team to write a book. And I had previously just wanted to do it all myself. Like, I wanted to be the writer, the editor, all of it. And I just couldn't do it, because a lot of writers, I'm not unique on this, a lot of writers um, are very critical of their own writing. And so I would write it and be like, oh, that's terrible, and I'd throw it away. Well, now with this last book, I basically enlisted a writer, excuse me, a reader. I enlisted an editor, a copy editor. It was just a reminder that you and I can't do things alone. We are called, as a church, we're called a community. As individual Christians, we're called a community. It's not just me and Jesus, it's me, you, and Jesus. It's me and a whole community of other people in Jesus. And so that principle that all of us need people on our team, I think should be applied to every area of a man's life. And that's, whether you're writing a book, or whether you're, trying to grow in the spiritual life, you just can't do it alone. Whether you're trying to become a better father, a better husband, you can't do it alone. You've got to have a team that helps you do it. So yeah, putting that book together, just the process of writing that book was like a spiritually challenging experience, but it was also filled with all sorts of really practical lessons.
Yeah, that's great stuff, man. Those are some great life lessons that I did not expect to get from that answer, but that's really good.
This podcast is part of the Edify Podcast Network. Edify is a faith-inspiring app that brings together thousands of the best Christian podcasts in one place for your listening enjoyment. Cut through the noise and grow your faith by diving into the world's top Christian podcasts today. Download the Edify app for free from the App Store or Google Play, or by going to edify.app. That's EDIFI.app.
We often hear variations of the phrase, you understand your why, when it comes to doing something, especially if you are told to do something. And it's important because when you understand why you do something, it's much easier to find the motivation that you need to do it day in and day out. But when we talk about pursuing our God-given potential, some people might ask, why? If they're content with where they are in life, if they're happy, things seem to be going well, what do you say to that guy that's just kind of comfortable being comfortable, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is, it's your own happiness, really, at the end of the day. The famous quote from, I think it was Blaise Pascal, said, all men seek happiness. They just use different means to get there, right? And so one of the great discoveries of my life in terms of my faith is that God does not call me to choose between living to his glory and living for my happiness. Those things are one and the same. And so as I pursue God's glory and I become more of who he meant me to be, and I begin fulfilling the potential that he himself put in my heart, it's like I come into myself. I become the man that I was always meant to be. And in that moment, there is joy. There is increased satisfaction in life. So what I would say is to the people who are, skeptical, is I'd say, well, that's fine. So you're not really serious about your own happiness, because the more you become who you're meant to be, the more you glorify God in your life, the more you will experience satisfaction and joy in life. And I want to clarify that does not mean that everything will go well for you and that life's just going to be hunky-dory and nothing but a playground. No, it doesn't mean that at all. It means, in fact, sometimes the opposite. It means that there might be trials, there might be tribulations, there might be real difficulty and pain, but you will have developed as a person so much that you will be able to meet that pain and meet those trials with virtue and with joy and with character. And yeah, I know there's a great quote by C.S. Lewis, and I'm going to do it severe injustice, but it basically says that the man who who just prefers to squander his life away on drinking and sex and sports and living for nothing other than sort of earthly things. He says that man is like a child who's basically playing in the dirt and doesn't understand what is meant when his uncle says, "Hey, I'm going to go take you on a great vacation at sea." That child has no idea, like, that he's completely satisfied with just playing in the dirt when something infinitely greater is offered to him. The modern analogy that I would use is if I said to my daughters, like if my daughters were out playing in the mud in our backyard, and I said, "Hey, I want to take you to Disney World," and they had never heard of Disney World. They said, "No, Daddy, I'm fine. We're fine playing in the mud. We're having a ball here." Well, I'd have to actually take them to Disney World and show them this is infinitely greater than what you're imagining or what you're experiencing right now. And so, in the same way, I think the person who's just sort of happy doing what they're doing and not committed to pursuing their potential and living out God's glory in their life, they're like the little boy or girl who's just playing in the mud, and God's over there going, "Hey, I got Disney World for you. If you just trust me, I got Disney World for you. I got joy that you can't even imagine," you know?
Yeah.
And that's what I would say. You're just cheating yourself out of an amazing experience. Again, not that life is going to be nothing but fun and games, but you're cheating yourself out of the experience of the presence of God and the fulfillment of his plan in your life.
Yes. Agreed. I also think, and these are my words, not yours, but I would say that happiness isn't the goal. It's a convenient outcome, right? When we chase Christ, when we strive to be more like Christ, we find joy in the Lord, which is, that's the true source of happiness.
Right.
I feel.
Right. No.
But
I
the
agree
world's
with you on
definition,
that. Yeah, for sure.
yeah. And I was just gonna say the world's definition of happiness is much, much different. Obviously, we all know that.
Yeah, I think a
But
way to, think a good, I think a good qualification or good tweaking that I've heard before is the world's definition of happiness is circumstantial. If the circumstances are right, then I will experience some emotion and some sort of personal satisfaction. Whereas the biblical definition of happiness is really more of an attitudinal thing. It's that I am able to see with the perspective of eternity, and so I can choose to experience joy even in the midst of suffering. But yes, either way, I agree that ultimately the happiness that we are seeking is the joy that we encounter in the presence of God himself.
yeah, that C.S. Lewis quote got my wheels turning a little bit. I mean, it
You
seems
should
like
look
that
it
is
up.
where,
I did it. I just kind of trashed it, but you should look it up.
but I mean, in a sense, that's where we see much of our culture today. They're playing in the dirt, right? And many people don't know what they don't know when it comes to what God has planned for them, has in store for them, but they're content with, living their truth. And I think we all know what that means.
Right.
Pursuing happiness in material things, ungodly experiences that may bring fleeting moments of happiness, but it's fleeting.
Right.
And it's certainly in many cases not holy or righteous.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And since we're talking on a podcast that's geared toward dads, a friend of mine, his daughter is actually our nanny. He lives in Texas with his wife and family. She lives in Kansas with us. And his oldest daughter just had a baby. And what's great about this family is that they kind of have a tradition of getting married younger in life. So this baby that was just born, her name is Margaret. She currently has a living grandfather, a living great grandfather, and a living great great grandfather. I mean, that's how strong and how still, intact the extended family is. And as my friend Jeremy and I were talking about it, I was just saying, brother, again, there's nothing wrong inherently about enjoying like a nice car or money in the bank or anything like that. But I said, every now and then we do need to say to anybody involved in the personal development and motivation space, none of that stuff compares to children. None of that compares to having a granddaughter. He said, it's just such a mystical experience. He said, having helped, create a kid who then created another kid. He said it's an amazing experience that it's hard to wrap your mind around. But it's a reminder that, if you have success as the world defines it, and you have money in the bank and six-pack abs, and you have, all the fame in the world, but you don't have those things that God himself established, family and friends and faith, how valuable is your life? And so it's just, I think a huge part of the definition of success for every man should be relationships with your wife, with your children, with your parents, with your extended family and friends. What are the quality of your relationships? And if the quality of your relationships are not good, I don't know how good your definition of success really is.
Exactly. Yeah. If you don't have success without any relationships, it sounds miserable. Sounds like a miserable existence.
Yeah.
Yeah. And everything that you just mentioned, you hear story after story of people on their deathbed regretting the things that have to do with God's plan for our life.
Yeah.
And they never relate back to material things.
Yeah. Nobody's on their deathbed going, man, I should have bought another Harley, or I should have bought another Lamborghini. Yeah. Nobody says that.
No, not at all. And there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Well, I always like to give guys practical takeaways, and you've given us some already, but I'm curious, are there practical ways for guys to discern sinful ambition from holy ambition? Because the drive to provide for our families is strong. I think it's just baked into our DNA when it comes to men.
Yeah.
But that can lead us to do just about anything that it takes oftentimes to provide. So how do you avoid chasing the wrong things in the spirit of what might seem to be virtuous?
Well, I think the first thing is just to continually keep that strong connection going with the Lord. And what are your basic daily habits that you're engaging in to keep your relationship with the Lord strong? I think of at the very least, are you spending 10 minutes in prayer every day? Are you spending 10 minutes meditating on scripture? Are you taking time every morning to formally dedicate your day to the Lord and say, Lord, this is the day that you gave me. And my desire is to honor you, to pursue my God-given potential, not just for my own gain, but for your glory and the good of the world. And to ask the Holy Spirit for help and guidance in every day that you live. To me, keeping that baseline going will help you discern, will give you clearer eyes to think through, all your different pursuits and whether they're honoring to the Lord or not. I also think, especially for the guys who are married, most of us are married to pretty good women who genuinely love us and genuinely want the best for us. So, be intentional about asking your wife for feedback. Like, do you think I'm too obsessed about this, or does this seem okay? And hopefully you've got that relationship dynamic with your wife that she's going to be honest but gentle with you about that. I think it's always good. Again, we're not supposed to do this alone. We're supposed to do this in community. So having the feedback, not just of your wife, but having good friends and family who you can ask advice and get feedback from. But I would also say this is that just be aware of the fact that we are never going to do things completely from 100% pure motives here on earth. I mean, this side of heaven, we're always going to be complicated individuals. And I remember when I was a pastor and I would preach a sermon and people would respond really well to it. And people come up and say, oh, it meant so much to me. Like, that got me so jazzed. I mean, it brought a lot of joy to my heart. But I also, to be told, liked the attention. And I liked being treated like I was important. And at one point I was lamenting that to somebody and I was like, well, maybe I shouldn't even preach anymore. And they said, are you kidding me? God would have no preachers if that was the case, is that you're never going to do things from a completely pure motive. And so the advice that was given to me was ask the Holy Spirit to purify your motives. Jesus is very clear. We have not because we ask not. So ask him for help. And so that's what I do whenever I give a talk, or if I'm meeting with one-on-one with somebody and I want to make sure that, I'm doing it for the right motives, I just say, Lord, purify my motives, purify
Mm,
my motives. And
yeah.
when I'm not doing something for the right reason, show me, you know? Um, so that's, I guess that's as practical as I could get right now. Just ask for help.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff, and it's pretty basic. I mean, just the more you're in the Word, the more time you spend in prayer, the more He will guide your thoughts and your
Yeah.
actions and your behaviors, and keep you pointed in the right direction.
Yeah. There's that
Good.
famous passage, Mark, and it's the famous Psalm. And I think I want to say it's Psalm 36. I forget which one, but it's delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. And a lot of people misinterpret that to basically mean, oh, just love God and you'll get everything you want. Delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. That's not what that psalm means. Okay. What it means is that when you truly delight yourself in the Lord, when you take time to pray, when you root yourself in scripture, when you are part of a Christian fellowship and you're having all of the things that God says are good for your soul, then what desires you have are usually the ones that he put in there. Okay.
Mm,
Delight yourself in the Lord. And when you have desires, it's probably a desire that came from the Lord. So that's what I always tell people is the best way to discern what you're supposed to do in life is to go spend some time with the Lord, you know? And if after spending months with the Lord and deepening in your relationship with him, and he says, or you feel this real urge to go buy I don't know, a lawn care company and scale it to 9 figures, well, there's a good chance that he put that desire on your heart because he has something that he wants to do with that. So that's kind of what I say. You can't go wrong. The deeper you go with the Lord, the clearer things are.
yeah, definitely can't go wrong. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, man, we're flying through our time here. I've got one more question that I
Sure.
try to ask a lot of my guests. Obviously, the more you chase God, the more you try to fulfill His purpose for your life.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be able to leave a legacy, and that phrase, leaving a legacy, means a lot of things to a lot of different people. But when if Vaugh Kohler were going to leave an inspired legacy, what does that mean to you?
Well, first of all, let me just say that I love the whole concept of legacy. I think it's a good and noble concept, but I have for probably the last 20 years been influenced by a quote that I heard from the late great Rich Mullins, the singer-songwriter who died in, like, I think it was 1997. He wrote some of the best Christian songs, Awesome God, Step by Step. He was known for, multiple albums. I heard him say this at a Christian concert one time. He said, if I really want to leave a legacy, like if that's my ultimate goal, he said, I think that's prideful. And the only legacy that I will leave is one of ambition and pride. But he said, if I make it my goal to love God, to love other people, then that's the legacy that I will leave. And so I've always been influenced by that. And so I'm like, you know what? I don't necessarily have a desire to leave a particular legacy, like in a particular area of life. My goal, especially as I get older and older, comes from, straight from Paul's prayer in Philippians chapter 1, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight, so that you may be blameless and pure, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ our Lord, to the glory and the praise of God. I want to love God, and I want to love other people. And I pray that that's my legacy. That turns out to
Oh,
be, if I die, that's really the legacy that I leave behind.
that would be a great legacy. It's a great answer. That's a great answer.
Thank you.
And this has been a really good conversation. I've enjoyed the conversation. I'm excited to read the book. I have not read it yet.
Yeah.
But like I mentioned to you off air, the whole reason you're here, I saw an ad for your book on Instagram. I did a little dig in, and I thought this would be a great topic to dive into. So I'm excited to order the book. I encourage everybody listening and watching, go out there, get a copy of this book. Where can people learn more about you, buy this or any of your other books, and just kind of keep track of what you're up to?
Thanks. Just vaughnkohler.com is my website, VAUGHNKOHLER. What I do is every week I send out what I call my Sunday Best newsletter. And it's a newsletter that is designed to help you pursue your God-given potential. It's kind of an integrating faith and personal development. Again, I try to take these topics from a biblical standpoint, from a scriptural standpoint, try to give people both principles and practical tips on how to become who God meant you to be. And if you sign up for my newsletter, it's free. It's just every week it's free. And then the two other things, the book is available on Amazon, and I also have a virtual community. Right now we got about 70 people. It's great so far. I started it this past March. It's basically an online group, once again, dedicated to helping one another pursue our God-given potential, not just for our own gain, but for the glory of God and good of the world. We say that all the time. And so that's called Empowered Fellowship. And you can find out more about that on my website too. So I'm most active on Instagram. I'm not super active on Facebook and really not at all on Twitter. So if people want to reach out to me, say hello. I try to interact with everybody I can.
Love it, man. Well, we will link to all that stuff in the show notes. I want to thank you again for your time, guys. Again, the book is called Sacred Drive, Biblical Principles for Pursuing Your God-Given Potential. Get out there, get a copy of it. Vaughn, thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Mark.
Guys, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's conversation, share it with a friend and subscribe to the show so you don't miss future episodes like the one you heard today. And be sure to check today's show notes for all the ways you can stay plugged into the Inspired Legacy, including my free download called 9 Ways to Be a Better Dad. You can sign up for my free weekly devotional called Inspired Inbox. And you can join the private Facebook group, a community of other like-minded men looking to become the best husbands and fathers they can be. So get plugged in. Like, subscribe, leave a review, and help more guys find the show, because we need more men battling together for the sake of the next generation. Until next time, live inspired.